Welcome to the Album Anniversary Podcast. Today's show is about Tim by The Replacements. It was released September 18th, 1985 and is celebrating a 40-year anniversary. I am your host, Caleb, or Caleb the Spy on social media, and every day on social media, I do my best to post about what I call album anniversaries. So, on the Album Anniversary Podcast, we take a look at a classic album, an album we love, or an album that's important to us on the anniversary of its release date. Albums on the show often focus on alternative rock, punk, and my strange obsession with ska. In the 90s, I was super into the Christian music scene, so that does come up often on the show. And today, I'm joined by no one. So here's the deal. I tried to set this up. My work schedule and my vacation schedule are just kind of getting in the way. I had a couple people that I thought would be interested, but just didn't work out. So here I am. I'm going to record this. This is going to be pretty quick. I am up early because I'm getting a child off to college, and I'm watching them drive on Life 360, literally making sure they get to where they need to go, and thought I would take my mind off of it and record a little podcast. So there's a little view behind the pop filter. It is very early. I've already been up for about 4 hours, and it's 6 o'clock. So the anxiety of a parent just coming through on the microphone as I just do something to take my mind off of it while I frantically watch Life 360. All right, let's jump in and talk about this album. So like I said, this is going to feel a lot like some of the older shows where it was just me talking. I'm just going to ramble on for a couple minutes, and then you can listen to this if you want. If you don't want to, no big deal. So this is Tim by The Replacements. Again, released September 18th, 1985. I do also see somebody saying that was released in October of 1985, but I don't know. So I'm going with September 18th. That's what I see over and over again. It is the band's fourth album, and it was on Sire Records. That is owned by Warner Brothers, so this was a major label debut. They had previously been on Twin Town Records. And if you don't know anything, Twin Town also had, if you don't know anything, you've come to the wrong place, because I'm not going to help you. But Twin Town also had Husker Du on it, which is another famous kind of Minnesota band that kind of blew up in the 80s, or I don't know if blew up is the right term, because they were still kind of pretty much underground. Both of them started as kind of punk bands, and then both of them kind of leaned into that alternative rock sound. But what you need to know about this is they are a Minneapolis band, and we'll get into why they're important. There's a good chance you haven't listened to a lot of The Replacements, or you have, and you just didn't realize it was The Replacements. So that's what we're going to kind of go through, and this is we'll get into whole like why I feel connected with them and all that sort of thing. But again, this was The Replacements' fourth record. Let It Be was a huge hit. That's the album before this, and then they got signed to this kind of major label. So this was their major label debut. This was produced by Tommy Ramone. He is also, his last name, I'm going to attempt to say it, is Tommy Erdely. It's a tough name to say, so I probably got that wrong. Tommy Ramone, though, is what he's known as. He wasn't with the Ramones super long, but he did write I Want to Be Your Boyfriend and the majority of Blitzkrieg Bop. He doesn't have a ton of other production credits, to be totally honest. A lot of his other production credits center around the Ramones, but they did get him. I don't know the story behind that, but yeah, that's kind of interesting to me that Tommy Ramone, he's the drummer, I believe, for the original Ramones, or early versions of the Ramones. So he did the production on this. Members on this, Paul Westerberg, he is the main songwriter for the group. He also does vocals, guitar, and piano. Chris Mars was drums and background vocals. And then we have two brothers, Bob Stinson. He did guitar. This was also his last record with the group. And if you also actually look at the record, he's the only one who's really noticeable on the record. He's the only one you can really see, but this was his last record with the album. And then Tommy Stinson, he played bass on this. He was with the group for a long time, and he would go on to help out bands like Soul Asylum, and I think for a long time he was the bass player for Guns N' Roses. I don't know if he still is. It's something I probably could look up, but he was definitely connected with Guns N' Roses in kind of some of their late stage existence. Tim had 2 singles, Bastards of Young, and I'm sorry, I will just say it now, there's going to be some swearing on the show because one of the song titles is that, and I'm not going to bleep it out. This song is also infamous because of the video for it. It is just literally the song playing, and it's video of a speaker for like however long the song is. It's about 3.5 minutes. That's it. And then the second single was Kiss Me on the Bus, and that song is infamous for their performance of it on Saturday Night Live, which we will talk about in just a second. Tim was a moderate commercial success, peaking at 183 on the Billboard 200, and it was also a critical success upon its release, and it's also gone on to be considered one of the best albums of all time. At one point, it made the Rolling Stones list of greatest 500 albums list. It's been on Pitchfork and Slant's best album of the 80s list, so it's a very critically praised album, and they re-released it as like kind of they reissued it with a different mix and some other things. That also was very critically praised. So this is a stalwart of the 80s alternative rock scene. Why have you never heard it? Because that's the way it goes sometimes. But there is a chance you've never heard it. So there you go. It was a huge success critically and a semi-success commercially. And like I mentioned, this album gets kind of tied into their performance on Saturday Night Live. So after this album had come out, they were asked to, I think, fill in like kind of last minute notice on Saturday Night Live. And so they did that. And so it's infamous because they were one of the bands banned from Saturday Night Live. Their performance was, they were drunk and the F-bomb got dropped really close to the mic. So it was in 1986, so a little time after this album was released, that they were invited onto Saturday Night Live, and then they were never invited back on Saturday Night Live. So one of the few acts that have been banned from Saturday Night Live. I don't know, a handful of them. Elvis Costello, Rage Against the Machine, The Replacements. I can't think of too many more. I'm sure, what's the girl who is lip syncing? Ashley Simpson. I'm guessing she won't be invited back either. All right, that's some of my fun facts about the album. Let's jump through our questions real quick. Like I said, this can be a real quick episode. So how did I discover this album? This is another example of an album and a band that I'm embarrassingly late on. So, my dad wasn't super into kind of alternative rock. He was into the Beatles and Bob Dylan, and that was the Moody Blues, and that's the sort of stuff that he was listening to, and that's the stuff that then I was listening to. And then the 90s, I when I kind of got into alternative rock and started listening to stuff on the radio, I jumped kind of right into the Christian music scenes. That was really kind of where I was. And so I just was not familiar with this. And again, I think it's very, very possible that a lot of people are not familiar with this. So I was not familiar with it. I just missed it. And it probably wasn't until the 2010s that I kind of started to discover this, specifically this and Husker Du. And it's really hard to untie those bands. Those bands feel very, very connected to me. So Husker Du and The Replacements, I will often just throw out that they kind of feel like very similar things. But anyway, they both kind of broke out of that Minneapolis scene in the 80s, actually St. Paul and Minneapolis scene in the 80s. So again, it's probably around that time in the 2010s that I really discovered this. And I think it's people that introduced me to it. Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, I think he mentioned Bob Mould from Husker Du, and so that kind of got me interested in it. Colin, I think that's his name, the lead singer of the Decemberists, he talked about his love of The Replacements, so that kind of got me into it. And then Brian Fallon of Gaslight Anthem also made a mention of it. Later, I'll go through kind of bands that were influenced by The Replacements, because I think that's really one of their most important things. But that really is it for me, is bands were influenced by them, kind of mentioned them, and then I went back and kind of checked them out. And, the Minnesota connection for me is super, super fun. I obviously have a strong affection for all things Minnesota. Maybe not all things Minnesota, but I have a strong affection for Minnesota things, so that was really exciting for me. So that's kind of my introduction to this album. So what is it that I love about this album? And I love this. This is kind of a continuing evolution of their sound. Let It Be is absolutely fantastic. It's probably my favorite record by them, but this is a very, very close second. I own them both on vinyl. They're kind of vinyl ones. They're just represses. In fact, I think my parents bought me this one. Bought me Tim. But it was kind of an evolution of that punk rock sound into more of this alternative rock sound. Paul Westerberg has, he's the main songwriter as far as I know, and he has a ton of influences, and those really started to come through on Let It Be and on this album. You really started to see some of those things come through. And so it's not that it's super catchy, but it's melodic enough that it's really easy to listen to. Whereas coming to some of their earlier records, they're really punk rock, and at times they're a bit much. I will say it. They have these moments, these kind of flashes of what they could be, but when they kind of pushed into this melodic alternative rock, that's really where I think they really are at their best, is when they kind of find that groove and find that thing again. And it's not that this is a super catchy record. There are catchy moments on it, but it's not like this. It's not a pop record by any means. This is very much an alternative rock record with some other influences. Roy Orbison is an influence of Paul Westerberg's, and you can kind of start to hear some of those things come through on this record. And just in general, this record has a great energy. There's a lot of kind of up and down. They kind of play with the tempo. There's some fast tempo songs. There's some slow tempo songs. They kind of mix it in. There's more slow tempo songs than I probably remember when I was doing a listen through on this. It just has this kind of this mix of it. They kind of start to be one of those bands that pushes into that quiet loud that would become synonymous with the Pixies and Nirvana kind of later in the later 80s and the 90s. So I think it's just a really, really great alternative rock album. I think a lot of the things that you would start to hear in the 90s in the alternative rock scene are kind of here. There's a punk influence, but it's just more of that melodic alternative rock. And I just think it's a great example of it. There's just so many great moments on this record. All right, why is this record important to me, or something that still holds up? So this makes it into my top 100 albums, and so that's pretty good for an album that I've come to pretty late. And I make the joke all the time that the Replacements are your 90s alternative rock. I make the joke all the time that the Replacements are your favorite 90s alternative rock band. This is their favorite alternative rock band. That's kind of how it seems to be, is that they really are this very influential band to a lot of kind of 90s alternative rock bands. And so I'm just going to name off a couple of them, and they're not all alternative, but just to kind of give you a flavor for people who have cited them as an inspiration or as an influence. So Green Day, Nirvana's the big one that I think a lot of people know of. Or that know their influence there. Wilco, the Lemonheads, Pavement, the Hold Steady, Ryan Adams, the Afghan Wigs, the Decemberists, Gaslight Anthem, the Get Up Kids, Jimmy Eat World, the Cribs, the Ataris, the Goo Goo Dolls, the Jim Blossoms, and They Might Be Giants. Again, all bands that are influenced by them. So if you like any of those bands, or kind of bands that are related, and even if there's just a 90s alternative band that you like, I bet you, I just feel very, very confident that at some point they were influenced by the Replacements. There was some sort of influence there from the Replacements. And so, again, just kind of a cool, for me, that's one of the powers of this band, is that, we'll kind of talk about it in a little bit, but like they never got huge. They never broke out into the mainstream. They kind of always kind of were right there on the edge. And so they were kind of an alternative underground band, and they stayed that way kind of for most of their career. And so they have these influences for people, and I think that's really, really cool that you get to see that in other bands really having that influence. All right, let's talk about some of my favorite tracks. I'm not going to go through every track by any means. This is probably, again, I'm trying to make this pretty quick, but Hold My Life is the opening track, and it's a solid track. The first two, Hold My Life and I'll Buy, are both just really, really good, alternative rock songs. Hold My Life is a good kickoff to the album. It takes a little bit to get to that chorus, but once it gets there, it's nice. Again, it's one of those catchy moments, or at least if it's not catchy, it's like sing-alongable at the very least. And then I'll Buy is the second song, and this kind of feels like you're really your standard, not standard, but your kind of replacement sound. It very much is on that. So another great song, those first two songs. Kiss Me on the Bus is one of the singles. I think I talked about it. This is a great song. The bass and the drums they really come through on this. They're really doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of variety in the drums. There's these little, that almost feel like hand claps in the back, but they're not. I think they're the drum parts. The bass is really, really good on there. There's just a lot of variety in it. It's, again, is it catchy? I don't know if it's catchy, but it's really, really sing-alongable, and it's really feels, I don't know, kind of, it's an interesting song, that's for sure. But it's a huge song for them. It's an absolutely huge song. My daughter has arrived at the place she was driving, her first time driving on the freeway. I'm going to pause for a second and text her that I'm happy that she's there. Sorry, I don't know where I was. Oh, the last thing I want to mention about Kiss Me on the Bus, totally got distracted there. I apologize. Is there's a couple points on this album that you kind of start to hear those jangly guitars. I think this is one of them. This is one of those places where those jangly guitars. So again, the Jim Blossoms and the Goo Goo Dolls, kind of might be those bands that kind of had that influence from them, and kind of get some of those jangly guitars. And I know everybody loves those jangly guitars in the 90s. That was a huge thing, and I think you start to get some of that here. Waitress in the Sky is another song that I want to talk about. It's kind of right in the middle of the album. It's song 5, and there's 11 songs off here. There's kind of a little bit of there's this high energy at the beginning, and then Kiss Me on the Bus is kind of an interesting, unique song. And then Dose of Thunder is kind of this rock, very standard rock song. And then Waitress in the Sky brings it back down. This is as close to a pop song, I think, as you get on this record. It's not a pop song, but it has these moments. Waitress in the Sky has always been one of my favorites. It's kind of a funny song. I think a lot of people feel like it's a degrading song. Like he's mad at the waitress in the sky, this flight attendant. But it's actually his sister was the inspiration. She hated the phrase waitress in the sky, and that's how she felt as a flight attendant. So it's kind of written from the opposite perspective, but that's where he got the inspiration for it from. So I think that's a pretty great song on this record. Side 2 is just great. I think that's one of the strengths of this album, in my opinion. It starts off with Bastards of Young. This is just such a great rock song. It's everything works on this. The performances are great. The verse is fun, and then the chorus just hits so hard. It's just absolutely great. So Bastards of Young starts off side 2, just really, really, a great rock and roll song. One of the great alternative rock songs of the 80s, and one of the greatest alternative rock songs of all time. They've got a couple of them that are up there. This is definitely one of them. Left of the Dial is another song off side 2 that I really like. It's just another great song. I really love his vocals on it, and this is one of those songs that they flirt with the kind of quiet and loud. It's not as extreme maybe as other bands would take it, but you kind of start to see it. So Left of the Dial is just another great song. In fact, the last 3 songs off this album I think are really, really good. Little Mascara is the penultimate song, and this is another one of my favorites, especially this late in the album. Again, it's not the hectic kind of punk sound that they were used to, but it's just kind of more of this just great melodic melodic alternative rock sound, and just, interesting lyrics. I think, Paul's a pretty good lyricist, and I don't always know what he's talking about. Sometimes he's really, really specific. It feels like really, really specific stories, again, like Kiss Me on the Bus is a super specific story, but again, just another great song to, kind of head out the album. And then Here Comes the Regular is a great emotional ending. It really brings it down. I think there's some piano on there. Kind of him really kind of leaning into some of those other influences. I think some people didn't love that that this song is on there because it felt so not punk rock. But this is just a great closing song, very emotional. I think this has been used in pop culture a number of times. So yeah, Here Comes the Regular. Great song. Just a great way to close out the album. It's 40 years later. Why should somebody go back and check this album out? And I just think this is such a great staple of rock. It's really, really important to that alternative rock scene. And yes, it's not going to be this like super, pop record. It doesn't have that. The strength of, in my opinion, the strength of the Replacements was that they were underground and they were authentic, and that's who they were. They never conformed to being big rock stars, and I think they could have. They were often their debauchery, their drunkenness got in the way, but they often were drunk because they were anxious about being out on stage. That's what I think the song "Swinging Party" is kind of about. That's kind of in the middle of this record, and I think that is something that's really, really, really unique. Is that their best quality, their authenticness, is maybe what held them back the most. And they are kind of that ultimate, they're one of the best bands that you've never heard of. And I think they're one of the best bands you've never heard of because they just never were able to get over that hump. They wanted the music to, make them rock stars and not have to try and do the image and play those games. And I just don't think they were able to do that. They never were able to kind of make it big because of that. They've obviously the bass player's gone on to play with some big bands, but again, it's just a very interesting and unique experience of this band because, I think they influenced a lot of people. They're the best band that you've never heard of, and I'm lucky that some of my favorite bands or favorite artists kind of pushed me in the direction to check out the Replacements because I think they're definitely worth checking out. Okay, that's it. Super quick and to the point. That's it for Tim by the Replacements. Again, released September 18th, 1985, celebrating a 40-year anniversary. Again, I tried to kind of get some people to do the show, but it just didn't end up working out. We just the scheduling was a little tough. So I hope you enjoy this. Just me rambling. You can, that's what usually I ask people where they can be found online. I'm not going to do that because nobody's here with me. I'm down in my basement early on a Thursday morning, just having some fun, kind of recording this. Hopefully this comes out okay. I hope people enjoy it. I'm going to switch over and we'll do the intro, or we'll do the little outro here. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Album Anniversary Podcast. I want to thank me for joining me to talk about this album about me. No, it's not about me. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What are your favorites from this album? I'm still on all the social medias. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, Patreon. You can either find me for Caleb the Spy or the Album Anniversary podcast. I will be really honest. I'm also on Facebook. I post in a couple groups there. I'll be honest. I'm kind of focusing on mostly big album anniversaries. I can't really keep up with all the things, and I'm kind of having to. I'll be honest. I'm having a hard time keeping up even with the podcast. Just life has gotten really, really busy again. So we'll see how much I keep on doing this stuff. I want to keep on doing it. It's been a lot of fun, but we'll see kind of how much my engagement stays. So please subscribe and share the podcast. Please leave a rating or review. For those of us who are not famous, it's really, really important that people spread the word about podcasts. It's just we can't do it on our own. If you enjoy this, you might also enjoy another podcast I've worked on. It's called I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. We're trying to figure out where we're going to land here in our cadence. Again, I just said it's so busy, I feel like I can barely keep up with anything. We have a whole backlog of episodes where we just kind of interview people that were in 90s youth group experience and kind of where they're at now, kind of what they learned from that experience, that sort of stuff. So hopefully that's an interesting show for people to check out. Again, it's called I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. They call your name out loud and clear. Here comes the regular. Call out your name. Here comes a regular. Am I the only one? Make the joke all the time that the Replacements are your 90s alternative